fascinating story. Tell us about it. I mean, why did you choose New York, and what did people learn in the 2 years, and what do they get after?
Well, you know, like the rest of the industry, we're all looking for trained watchmakers. And at Patek Philippe, we're trying to create watches for 150, 175 years. We need to have people actually repair them. So we realized there just weren't enough trained people out there in the field, and we thought we'd cut right to the chase and try to actually teach them ourselves. And when they get done with the 2-year program, they'll actually make an immediate impact and be able to work directly for Patek if they so choose and if they score well.
And if they score well. Well, Stephen, put this in context for us, because servicing a luxury watch like a Patek Philippe is a big deal. It's in demand, isn't it?
Sure, and some of these watches can take months to service. And if you have to do things like send them to a special artisan in Geneva to get it serviced, I mean, I've heard horror stories of people being without their watch for 14, 16, 18 months, which, you know, if you've spent $100,000 on your watch,
that's not acceptable.
You don't really want to be without it for 2 years. So to have the service right here in New York and to have the people able to service it is a big deal.
Larry, what's response been like? I mean, have you had to really market yourself, or is there a lot of demand?
Well, originally we thought we'd really have to market, but we went to a number of places, trade schools, 2-year colleges, and people just looking to maybe find their passion. And we ended up with over 400 applications. We culled that down to 6 candidates.
Well, that's like a, what, 2% acceptance rate or something.
But what's your criteria? Like, how do you know who's going to make a good candidate when they've never done it before?
You know, first of all, we had to expose. It took it down to about 80 individuals, and then we exposed them to really what watchmaking was on a daily basis. And I think that was, you know, that certainly some fell out at that point, but also we were able to get a look at just how passionate they were about it and how, let's say, moldable.
You know, employers regularly point out that there's a skills gap in this country, that they can't find people with the right skills to match the jobs that they need filled. What's your experience been like given recruiting for this program? Did you see evidence of this?
Well, there's a lot of bright people out there, young people. And again, I think you and I both have felt when you're coming out of school, you don't always know exactly what you want to do. So you try a few things, and you may have all the skills in the world, but it's more about finding your passion.
Stephen, do we see sort of other luxury watchmakers going along the same kind of path? Are they experiencing the same kind of shortages?
Sure. So the kind of labor shortage in watchmaking has been around for a while. I mean, in the 70s, when quartz watches really took off, people thought mechanical watchmaking was dead, so nobody trained. So now you have this big gap in ages. You have the old watchmakers are retiring, and nobody trained because they didn't think there would be any watches left to repair. So people like Rolex have already set up schools. People like the Richemont Group and LVMH have their schools where they train people, and it's on a slightly larger scale. They're covering more brands. But I don't think, you know, Patek is going totally outside the norm in thinking that training your own labor is probably the best route to go.
But where you are being a little bit of an outlier is that you're making the school free and you're offering students a stipend during the 2 years. Can you give us any idea how much this is costing the company?
Oh, well, the investment, obviously, with the director and all the equipment and the laboratory scenario, I mean, it's several $100,000s. But I think long term, I think it's clearly worth it to train these people and to have them understand Patek Philippe movements directly after a 2-year school, as opposed to a normal school where they would learn 2 years and then we'd have to apprentice them for a year or 2.
Right, more training.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the workshop's currently about 19 people, and you've said that you service 10,000 watches a year. Yes. Do you see that number growing, both in terms of the people you need and the number of watches they're servicing?
Well, I mean, we've been... last year, I think we made over 50,000 watches for the world. And again, with the awareness of watches growing over the last 20 years gradually, I don't think it's going to go away, and it's not going to go down. Vintage watches are becoming, like the watchmakers themselves, the actual collectors and the people interested in watches is a growing base. You have tech people interested, you have financial people interested. It's just a broader group of people.
Forget the iWatch, right? Forget the Apple Watch.
Yeah, no. Seriously. It's totally different.
iWatch is fine. As long as they want to put something on their wrist, eventually, if they get hooked on watches, we hope they find us.